You are listening to the Young Black Travelers podcast. Black voices talking on experiential travel, dedicated to creating a global community of travelers. So, be bold, be inspired, be spontaneous. We are YBT.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Young Black Travelers podcast. I am Simone, and I'm here with Assher.
Hey.
And so we're going to have a conversation today about our travel to Lisbon, Portugal.
Lisbon.
Assher went last night. Okay, wait. What you drinking?
Well, so what you tell me, because so I made some rum punch here, right? Rum punch. You would hear over this season that we've been sipping on rum punch. I made rum punch with Vinci rum, Sunset rum, Sunset Light. It's not the strong sunset that we have here. So let's cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Get yourself some rum punch as we have this conversation today about Lisbon.
Yes. And by the way, the rum punch is really good. It's hidden. So that's
Let
good.
it hit.
So yes, we're going to be talking about Lisbon. Assher went there last year, and I had the pleasure of going this past spring break, which was really fun. I felt like there was just a vibe, energy that I really love and appreciated. And so I kind of want to hear your experience of going as well. So let's dive right in. All right? Okay. So tell me, Assher, so why Lisbon? Why did you want to go there?
Wow. So Lisbon simply because we've heard, I'm sure you've heard a lot about Lisbon, the historic nature of Lisbon. A lot of time, Lisbon is known, particularly in the Black community. You know, they have Afro Nation and all of these events in Lisbon. So that was kind of the reason why Lisbon. And again, I do want to see the world. So why not Portugal? Yeah.
That's true. And I feel like for me as well, so I did Tap Air or Air Tap.
Okay, Tap Air.
And they do a really nice package where you can do a layover in Portugal, in Lisbon, while you go to another destination in Europe.
Gotcha.
So I was able to do that. I did a 3-day layover and then on my way to Madrid.
Okay.
So it worked out really nicely. So if that is something that you guys are considering, it is a gateway. It's right there, right when you're coming from New York. It's one of those first European countries that you hit.
Correct.
If you're going towards the middle, right?
Makes sense.
And so that was really cool. And
so that's why you did
exactly.
Portugal. Okay.
So that's why I was like, you know what? I want to go there. I want to check it out. But I'm curious to know about what were some of the things that were memorable to you? What stood out? Like what was surprising? What you were like, oh, I didn't know that.
Wow. Memorable. And well, I would start with surprising, right? I think while I was in Portugal, a lot of things started to hit me more so from a historical perspective, you know. So I like history. I like to learn about us as a people.
Absolutely.
And I think we're gonna get into the tour because I think you did the same tour that I did. But outside of that tour, well, on that tour, but even outside of that, you know, like memories, because I think the first excursion that I did was on sea, and he talked about the dock was the place where the expedition, the explorers left, all of that, and they were talking about monuments and how they were honored. So I think from that angle, I started to think about, you know, wow, what if these people didn't go and they didn't explore? Like a lot of things just were starting to hit me as I was in Lisbon, simply because the Portuguese were the first to explore and start the slave trade. Well, the transatlantic slave trade.
Right.
So I think that stood out to me, just those experiences. But outside of that, Lisbon is a very beautiful city. Portugal is a very beautiful country. There's a lot to see, a lot to do. The food is delicious.
What did you eat that you like?
So let me start with what I didn't like.
Okay.
I would say so. At the top of my mind, cod. I hated the cod, and I was surprised. Twice I tried it, and I just felt like it didn't have any flavor. Well, especially where I had it.
Okay,
Like
it was fried. Did you had it in a roll or you just had cod?
I had it fried.
Okay, not in
It-
their bacalao type of thing,
no,
right?
not in the
Okay,
bacalao
Jao.
way, just regular cod.
Okay,
And I also remember going to this restaurant and we had there was eggs and
mm-hmm.
it was supposed to be cod, like cod also was on it.
Okay.
Simone, when I tell you, I typically try to like hold out on like sending food back,
Mm-hmm.
but this time I really couldn't.
Really?
Yeah, it was really bad. Like there was this scent of like raw fish.
Oh wow.
And so I really hated it. I mean, like literally that day I ate nothing. But
That's
that
pretty
was
bad.
that experience.
Okay.
But I would say like I had really good pasta there.
Yeah.
There was this restaurant close to where I was staying that the pasta was delicious.
Okay.
I went to the Time Out Market.
I went to the Timeout Market.
How was that?
I loved it. It was actually on my way to Natty tour.
Okay.
And so I didn't get to.
Oh, you went in the morning.
I went. No, his tour was around 3.
Okay.
And so I walked through Times Square Market and I was like, wow, I wish I was able to spend a little bit more time there because it looked amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Uh-huh.
It was so I went in the night. I went after I think on my first night there.
Okay.
I went after I did like the boat tour of Lisbon.
Oh, okay.
And so I went literally because I needed food and that was the recommendation. So people said if you want to get good food, then go to the Time Out Market. And that was a really good recommendation. So if you really want delicious Lisboa food, you should go to the Time Out Market. There was just, I mean, they have them here. They have the Time Out Market here, but I've never been. But
you gotta go.
You gotta
go. Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
The one in Dumbo, it's really good.
I need to go
but
there.
The Times Square one in Lisboa
Mm-hmm.
was really good. I think because it gives
time out.
Sorry, Times Square.
I was waiting for you to talk about the market at Times Square. I'm like, oh, okay, she's talking about Time Out Market, Lisboa.
It's the drink, okay.
Blame it on the wrong punch.
Okay, but what's nice is that you do get a plethora of stuff, right, in one take. So you kind of get to see what the local cuisine is right there. Especially if you don't have a lot of time, it's a good starting place, I would say.
It is. I mean, and I think the food I ate there was really good.
Okay.
I tried their local, that pastry.
With the cotton.
Custard. No,
the custard. The pastel de nata. Yes, with the egg custard. Yes. It's a hit and miss for me. It's a hit and miss.
But it's everywhere, right?
It's
everywhere.
It is.
It's everywhere.
You have to try it at least once.
Yeah, you should. So yeah, definitely head to the Time Out Market. So that was a really good experience there.
Right. No, definitely. And I tried for the first time octopus.
You've never had
no
calamari?
Well, calamari is squid.
It's squid?
Yeah.
I thought it was octopus.
No, I did a little research.
Learned something new today.
Yes, it's squid.
I've always thought it was octopus.
Yeah, no. So I never had octopus. But it's a real big thing there in Lisboa. And so I was like, I gotta eat octopus.
Wow.
So I went to where I stayed was like, it wasn't a chain hotel. It was owned by 2 women. And it was really nice and really cost effective, by the way. I was right in front of the famous Tram 28. Was rolling past
you were in Alphamont?
No, I wasn't. I was more towards the center in a sense. I could have walked to Alphamont, but that was a little bit further than where I was.
So Alphamont is a famous neighborhood.
Right.
Everybody talk about it. So, you were.
Yeah. So she recommended it. And so I was like, I'm going to eat octopus. But I would say that when I was eating it, I did feel a little guilty. I was like, I don't know, the tentacles, it just made me sad.
Come on. Guilty.
I did. I felt
to
bad.
Eat Ursula.
Yes.
That wicked witch.
Exactly. I was like, well, this is real. And maybe because I wasn't used to eating it, that I felt a type of way.
But
while I was
Simone,
doing it.
wow, you just said something outside of the octopus that we talk a lot about here, just people having different experiences and why it's important to sometimes be local. And so you talked about staying at a local hotel and getting and being there with the owner, someone local who probably was really interacting with you and helping you along the way. I think things like that is really important.
It was so good.
Because I think, and I actually recommend that experience, because where I stayed initially, it was a regular hotel. I felt like they didn't want to talk to me.
Yeah, really?
Like, so nobody was, typically it's best when people are like giving you tips and tricks. They are engaged with you.
Right. Absolutely.
You find that more so with like smaller hotels.
Right.
Or high-end hotels where they are like really big on customer service. So that middle of the ground hotel that I probably stayed, would never recommend it. No interaction, but I guess those little hotels really are helpful because people give you the information that you definitely need that will help you.
And I just needed to, for a minute, just find the name because I did want to shout them out.
Shout them out, shout them out.
So I am going to look for that a little bit, but I did want to shout them out because they were really good. And they introduced me to a Black-owned restaurant as well, which was which was around the corner. And I felt like that's how I got to explore the Black scene in Lisbon.
You got to get the name of that Black. I wonder if it's because you did the Naki tour?
I did do the Nati tour, but I did the Nati tour my last day. So the host of my hotel, she told me about this restaurant. And then when I was at the restaurant, it was a lady. She is from Cape Verde. It was Cape Verdean food. And there's a strong population there because they speak Portuguese. So a lot of the countries that were colonized by Portugal, a lot of those countries, the people came, they lived there. And formed a community, which is really interesting to see. So I felt the Black presence in Lisboa more than I did when I traveled to Madrid. And that was awesome to see.
And though it's important.
Oh wait, her name, that restaurant is called Sophia.
Sophia.
Remember. Yes.
Okay, so you got to check out Sophia when you go to Lisbon.
It was so good.
Oh my God. And you said it was Cape Verdean food?
Cape Verdean food.
Wow. Yes. So listen, you guys, when you travel, I think one of the things that you need to keep in mind is always know who the colonizers were, right? Especially in the European American context. Because what you're going to find is a lot of the people who you're going to connect with, many people are people who are connected to that colonizing route. So a lot of the people, even when I was in Lisbon, you're finding people from Cape Verde, you're finding people from Mozambique, Brazil, big, Angola,
yes,
all the Portuguese colonies, they will be there. And that's just how our world is. I mean, even when you go to London, you're gonna find a lot of Jamaicans, people from St. Vincent, people from the colonies, South Africa. Places you've never heard, you're gonna find them there once they're English colonized. So that's a big thing.
And I think the movement of people and going to these other countries, it also influenced the culture and the space that is in the former colonizer country. And that's also because they're helping to shape the culture.
They shape the culture in a major way.
In a major way. Yeah. And then you also experience and you get to hear, especially from Nadi's tour, which we talk a lot about, but and I think you learn too about discrimination, right? It's still very present. Like sometimes we think about it as just it's a US thing, right? But there as well, there's that discrimination. And when I was at Sophia's place, I met a expat. She's a Black American and she's from Brooklyn, New York. And she's now living there. And one of her experiences that she was telling me about is being a Black American versus the Africans who are from the different countries in Africa. How her and their experiences are very different, right? Because you're using your US dollars. You're coming with an Americanized accent. The accent and all of that kind of puts you in a different place and status than from a lot of these Africans who know the language and are familiar with the space longer. And I thought that's also something for us to kind of think about, like that privilege, being in privilege while we're there as well, even though we're both considered Black, but could be treated very differently.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I think it was on Kelly, when Kelly was on our podcast and we were talking about Ghana and talking about how a lot of times in the American context, when we talk about Blackness, Americans typically look at everyone's experiences as their experiences. And a lot of times, and maybe that's our goal here, right? And our role here is to help you to look at it very different. We may all be Black, but we all have very different experiences in our Blackness. There are rich Blacks and there are poor Blacks. There are middle class Blacks. And not because I'm Black, I know what Simone is going through.
Right.
And Simone could actually be more privileged than I am and have a very different experience than I am. And sometimes they don't even know what I'm going through. I could be Black and you're Black and you don't even know what my lived experiences are.
Right.
Because the Portuguese experience is going to be very different from my Vincentian American experience, right? So those are things I would say for our Black community, and even out the white people who listen to this podcast, Spanish people, we're not all one. We're not a monolith. We are very dynamic in our experiences, and be very careful about how, I guess, when you go to Portugal and you interact with people, how you may expect them to actually interact with you. But can I talk about like how I felt discriminated in Portugal?
Oh, really? Okay. Yes, please.
And I don't know if I am like I'm over exaggerating this instance, but
it was real, and you felt it, so it's valid.
And I don't know if I was just super sensitive.
No,
but
tell us, what was it?
So
this is a validating space.
Ooh, come on.
All right,
this is the teacher. So it was at the hotel. So I was leaving the hotel, or actually coming back to the hotel that I was staying at. It was late at night, and I was, it was dark, and I was probably like one of the only persons on the street. There was this Black man and white girl walking the street. Going back to our point earlier about how, yes, I may be a Black American, but this was a Black Portuguese man, or probably African Portuguese man. Very different experiences. And so I'm walking behind the two of them, the white girl and the Black man. And Simone, she moved him to the side. She stopped. So she stopped, let me go in front. And then walk behind me. I'm like, and then they obviously continued to kept walking.
Moving. Yeah.
I'm like, did you feel that I was gonna attack you because I wasn't your Black friend? Because again, very different experiences, right? Like she know him, used to him. She probably sees that. And I hate to say I had a hoodie on. All of these things. And I'm like, wow, like this is really happening in Portugal
right now.
Now. But I'm not surprised that it happened.
Right.
And in fact, it has never happened to me here in New York, but it has happened in Portugal.
Right. No, definitely. No, I understand it, and I get that kind of experience, which is valid, right? Like she probably felt a type of way, right? Especially like the context way, and let me make him go because I don't know what he's about to do based on some stereotypes or that she has heard and experienced, because that guy didn't even notice you, right? He was just,
no, he noticed. So
he did notice you.
And that's why even when you talk about like our Blackness, very different. Sometimes, and we know this based on the slavery story, there are Black people Black people were actually enslaved by Black people. Well, they were the ones who were sold by Black people to the slave masters. So it was from that. So he obviously is, used to that scenario. He's used to them, her, like, so he could have also felt threatened, right?
But he's not the one who made the decision.
But he's not the one who made the decision.
Right. So that's interesting. I think though, as you pointed out, as you said, that it is important for us to think about like our experiences that we have in just because we could just be in different time and different space. And you may have a bad experience at one place. And I may go and be like, no, the people were really nice and really friendly. But I don't think that we should be putting pressure or forcing our perspective on other people.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that a little bit, like when I was going to Spain, just really quickly, a lot of people were like, oh, you're going to face racism there. You're going to be discriminated. And that was in my head. So I led with that for my trip, right? In my head, waiting for it to come, waiting for it to happen. And when it didn't, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like it is important, like when we do have these experiences, like we should be talking about it, of course, but not necessarily putting fear in people's mind when they're going to travel to these places that they are going to get this experience.
They're going to get, and I would say typically, I think Black Americans are typically very sensitive. A lot has happened here, and Black people in America are we talk about these experiences. And I think a lot of times when they talk about travel, and especially to places in Europe, they talk about it as the forefront of the experience, right? Just like the other day, there was a panel, and, basically one of the guys said, to a student, are you sure you really want to go to a PWI? And the student is like, yes, a Black guy, yes, I want to go. But his experience is not the other person's experience who may be fearful about that.
Absolutely. And so we shouldn't be pushing that at all. But also, just sharing experiences is just important, right? Yeah. And so, Assher, I do want to continue our conversation. This is good. I love this. And so we will be right back. Stay tuned, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yep.
Hope you're enjoying some rum punch with us. And so let's continue. So we did talk a lot in the beginning about discrimination, about being Black in Portugal, in Lisboa specifically. And so I wanted us to get into a little bit about this tour that we mentioned before with Natty. And I felt...
Hopefully we're saying your name right. Simone says Natty.
What do you say?
I said Naki.
I think you're right.
I think it's Naki, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. It is Naki. Okay. Sorry. Naki,
Listen,
we love you and we love your tour and we want everybody to go on it.
Yes,
right?
You definitely should.
So tell us, what was your experience? What was some highlights for you?
So listen, I loved the tour. And as Simone said, I certainly recommend, and Simone recommend, that you take this tour because, by the way, you could book this tour on Airbnb Experience because that's how I booked it. That's how you booked it as well?
That's how I booked it as well.
So just look at the Naki tour, historical tour of Lisbon, or Black tour of Lisbon, and you'll find his tour. Highlights of the tour. I mean, it was a very rich tour with a lot. You're learning a lot about the history, the Black history of Lisbon, right? So you hear things like the Portuguese people haven't really they don't own up to the trade or what has happened.
Right.
They're trying to brush it under the rug.
Don't have the census.
Correct. All of those things. Because Black people aren't necessarily recognized in Portugal, interestingly.
They don't have a census, so they can't keep track.
Right. So there's a lot that you get from the tour. I think he was even saying one thing about how, I guess, his group was trying to lead a movement for this statue. Right. And they didn't give the money for that, but they've given money for other white slave owners to really honor them. Now, if that was America, it's going to be a whole thing. Right?
It's going to be a whole thing.
So that's where I think we should really go, and that really cut me deep. But
no, absolutely. Yeah. And when I was there, so it's been probably a little bit close to a year.
Yeah.
There was a statue that was recently put up that we went to in a square that was predominantly visited by a lot of the African communities for selling their wares and goods and food.
Finally.
And it was a community square. per
Got you.
se of the diaspora.
Oh, wow.
And they had put up a statue there, a prominent Black person, and the statue is there. But the location, though, it's very hidden. You wouldn't know unless somebody really told you that it was there.
Wow.
So they are doing things, and it is getting done.
Got you.
Just not at the rate, of course, that they want it to be done, but that was a highlight to
Nice.
kind of see that. To see that there, that was pretty
Good.
cool.
That's good. Wow. Well, I mean, again, hopefully they, as you said, they're really trying to get in front of it, which is necessary. Because, you know, I think people may try to like cover something, but it's not okay to cover it. Just put it in the light. Like, this is what we did, this is what we contributed to it. We are sorry, and let's move on, right? Because I think that's what
Some
Black
people
people,
not ready there.
they're not ready for
They're
that, but
not
that's what
ready.
needs to happen. Like, own what you've done. But there's deep history there, and the Naki tour covers a lot of it. But I would say, I mean, my tour was a really long tour.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you, like, it started at 3. I was late, almost missed the tour. But I got home at about 2 a.m.
Okay. So when we did end up the restaurant, the Black-owned restaurant, that was also Cape Verdean as well. Ours was. I had to go because I had to catch a flight.
Makes sense.
So I had to leave. So I'm sure people were mingling and just lounging and
so we
talking.
literally we ate there.
Yes.
And then we went out after to like 2 different spots.
I love that.
So basically what happened was that this group that toured together, like you ended up partying and just vibing together. And you could have probably gone out for other days and all of that. So it was a really nice networking tour,
right?
Because it really connected people who lived in Lisboa and people who lived different places in the world.
No, that's great. I loved it. Yeah, my group too. Everybody was engaged, friendly, and everything. So I could definitely see something like that happening.
Yeah.
I just had to book. I had to go. I got my food to go. I was like, pack that up, please.
I'm leaving.
I'm leaving. Yeah. But no, that tour was really enlightening because that's one thing I do. When I go to a place, I do a tour. And before I did Naki's tour, I did just a general knowing the land, knowing the space, and like orienting myself. And I did one like with one of those free tours, and they did not. They just said, and Portugal did some really horrible things, including slavery, imperialism, and like piratery or something like that. And then that was it. And then they moved on. And that was the mention in that tour. And so that was a contrast. Naki's tour was a contrast to that with like your takeaways and like hearing the true history and really diving into that, because you're walking around in the space and not really thinking about the Arabic and the Moorish influence, especially in the fado music. And I was able to go to a fado musical experiences while I was eating my food. Listen, I was all over.
You were engaged.
Yeah, I was engaged. And like knowing that fado music, a lot of the inspiration is from people who were in Rajasthan in India. Right? I'm sorry, y'all. I think I'm getting that wrong with flamingo.
Okay.
but influenced a lot by the Moors and the Arabics, right? With the sound and the rhythm and the instrument, a lot of African instrument. And so we don't talk about that too. So it's like knowing those stuff is really important when we're talking about how music, how people and cultures influence each other, right? How it travels, right? It's not just people that travels, ideas travel, food travel, and all of that.
Exactly.
So definitely was a highlight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. So, okay. So you did Lisboa.
I did Lisbon.
So where else did you go in Portugal? Were you able to go anywhere else?
Yeah, I did. Okay. So I went, and I wish I had more time to go to other places because I went north to Porto, and I'm going to talk about it. But I also wished I went south because Lisbon is central. And so there's the north, and then there's a south. So obviously the south is closer to Africa
Mm-hmm.
and very different. So what I've learned is the more south you go, you're gonna start seeing the culture shift, the people shift. You may even find more Moorish looking people in
Mm-hmm.
the south. But yeah, I went to Porto, and obviously Porto is known for wine.
Yes.
Interestingly, I didn't have any wine. So when you do go to Porto, make sure you get some wine because Porto is known for the world famous wine. Just like if you went to Argentina, you probably want to get yourself some Malbec.
Right.
But I loved Porto.
Yeah.
I think Porto was just beautiful. I mean, Porto reminds me of, well, I would say Pittsburgh reminds me of Porto. Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I say that because if you've ever been to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, here in the United States, Pittsburgh is very bridgy. There's a lot of bridges in Pittsburgh next to like hills, which is like Porto. There's a lot and rivers, right? So that's why Porto is called Porto because, the river and all of that. So that's kind of Pittsburgh. I think when I went to Pittsburgh after, I was like, I feel like I'm in Porto. And then you're seeing the houses on the hills and picturesque.
Yes.
Picturesque with old architecture and new architecture, just a very beautiful city.
Beautiful.
Porto is known like the bridges in Porto is, what it's known for. So like you're going to see a lot of people congregated around like the bridges and maybe they're taking pictures on bridges.
Nice.
The trams are going over bridges. Very beautiful.
Yeah. What you did in Porto?
In Porto, I did a surf lesson.
Okay. Did you need to know how to swim?
Yeah, I know how to swim. Don't. I don't know if you need to know. No, I don't think you need to know how to swim
to do the surf lesson. Did it ask you?
I honestly can't remember.
Okay.
But I won't get into the water if I don't know how to swim.
Okay,
so,
got it.
Anywho. So I did a surf lesson. This is the second time I've done it.
All right.
And what I would say is by that time of the year. So I'll backtrack and say Porto I went in August, was cold.
Oh, really?
It was cold. Portugal was cold as well. This was shocking to me. This was August. And
our August. New York City August.
New York City August is still hot because it gets cold, a little bit breezy around like mid-September, end of September.
Absolutely.
But it started to get chilly. Like I packed only shorts and I was just like, it was just cold.
Check the weather, y'all.
Check the weather. Head to Porto. Obviously, it's more north and it's even colder. I'm telling you, like the night was just ridiculously cold. And so obviously, I'm saying that to say the water, even though it's summer, doesn't particularly warm all the way up. So I remember headed to the beach and I was like, oh God, and it started to rain that day.
Oh,
I was like, do I really want to do this? Is this something that I need to be doing right now? However, the instructor, oh my God, he is the best. I also booked this on Airbnb Experience.
Oh, cool.
And I'll find his name for you, but he is so good. Experienced professional surfer. He's from Brazil, lives in Portugal, and he also models for all of these big brands. But I think, he's good because he did this thing to get your body acquainted to the water. Okay. And so you go in and you come, like you put your foot in and you come out, you put your foot in, you come out, and then you went in, right? And so like that helped. So even though the water was cold, like by a certain point, you weren't even paying attention that the water was cold.
Okay.
So nonetheless, surfing was great. That's one thing I did. Obviously ate food in Porto. I was in Porto for only about a day.
Okay.
So there wasn't much to do. I think the surfing was the big thing that I really wanted to do. And it was the highlight. And the hotel I stayed at, man,
you loved
it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Nice view.
I'll get the name for you.
Okay. That sounds good. That was one thing that was recommended to me as well, to go to Porto, but I didn't have time. So I'm like, I have to really come back. I went to Sintra, which is a day trip.
Okay.
And so Sintra is where the kings and queens and royalty and nobility. That's where they
Oh, that's where
went.
they lived.
That's where
Mm.
they had their summer homes, and for because it's cooler there because it's up in the hills as well. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of castles and palaces that are there. Beautiful architecture, and one of the highlights was Pena,
Mm.
which is one of the kings. He made it for his wife, but she didn't get to enjoy it because she died before. But the castle in itself is very fairy tale. Think of those fairy tale books that you read or
Mm.
heard, and you see those pictures. That's what you see. It's an enchantment for the places that we were able to experience in Sintra, and you can see why they would go there to build. Very, very picturesque, very scenic, and you just felt relaxed with the trees and everything like that. So that was a pretty cool day trip that I was able to go on. I got it through Get Your Guide,
Get Your Guide, okay.
and they took care of everything. So I feel like when you're short on time, those structured tours are really helpful
Mm.
because you don't have to think about it, right? But of course, if I had more time, I'll probably just take the train because it was easy to take the train out there and kind of move around. But because of time, I did it that way, and it was great. I
Wow.
enjoyed it.
What was the city again? Centra, you said?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sintra.
And I would definitely recommend when you go to Porto, you stay at the Vichy. It's called the Vichy Porto. That's Vinci, Vinci, Vincci Porto. I'm telling you, that hotel was beautiful. I'm talking
Really?
about like it's right across from the river, right across from a helipad. So you could do tours of Porto through the helipad there.
Nice.
It was just, yeah, it was beautiful. They have a bar that it was really nice.
Yeah, we gotta go back.
Gotta go back and definitely, yeah, if you want to learn to surf, and I've done this 2 times now. You want to do this in Porto and it was experience in Porto, and I typed in surfing,
Uh-huh.
and that came up. So
you just knew you wanted to go surfing in
because
Porto.
well, I've done surfing before when I was in El Salvador.
Okay.
And so, which I need to continue to work on it because it still hasn't really been working for me.
It hasn't become your leisure activity as yet.
Or I just have not been able to stand up on that board. 2 times now, I've gone to try to surf, and I'm telling you,
it takes some time.
oh, it does take some time, and some people get it instantly.
Yeah.
What he did tell me was the surfing instructor Tulio. He was like, he kept on saying, "You have to focus. It seemed like there's something blocking. You probably like have a lot that is on your mind." And he's like, "Look at the building." Look at the building. Only focus on the building. He's like, sometimes you gotta bring yourself back down and let everything go. So it was like this real motivational type.
Right.
Like, the man was going there. After I left that surfing lesson, I remember sitting on the train in Portugal, just like processing everything that was said.
It was not only surfing, y'all. It was a therapy session.
It was a therapy session. And let me also say this before we end. I don't know if this was your experience. I don't know if this has ever happened to you while you're in Europe or anywhere traveling. But Americans, people who do not use the 24-hour clock, I am telling you.
Listen.
Learn it, one. But pay attention when you're making bookings. Because you may have booked something that is in 24-hour.
Right.
And so I did that. I booked, when I was booking the train tickets from Lisbon to Porto, I booked a train ticket that, I don't know how I got the departure right, because I felt maybe because it was in the morning.
Right.
So it was, I left more than likely probably in the morning, 9 a.m., something along that line. And the return now is when it could usually be messed up, because remember the 24-hour clock, it now switches to 16, 17, 18, 19, up to 23, 24.
23.
Yeah, so obviously that wasn't on my ticket. I saw, I think, five 500 hours. In my head, it was 5 p.m.
Okay.
Oh, I was supposed to be in the train at 5 a.m. in the morning. I get to the train. Here I am, just coming to the train. It was a beautiful day. I was on time. Get to the train station.
Right now.
Recognize that, well, first of all, the train wasn't coming.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, okay, well, it was a busy train station, so other trains came.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, okay, well, trains are typically not late.
Right.
They're typically on time. Nonetheless, they told me, I think I looked at the screen and I saw the train to Porto was on platform, let's say 2, when my ticket probably said platform 1.
Okay.
It really didn't click to me that something was off. Anywho, got on the train at platform 2 that was now going to Portugal, recognized that it's a local train. I'm like, okay, something is wrong here because the train I came on was kind of express. Anywho, I get on the train, the conductor's coming around to check tickets. As he's checking tickets, I'm like, well, he looks at my ticket and he's like, in Portuguese, and obviously I can't understand. He says something along the lines of, this is not your train, this, that, and the third. He obviously says something along the line of, wait until the next stop to get off. And he let me off, which in my head, I'm like, he could have just let me go. He lets me off and he tells me I have to speak to the agent. Go speak to the agent. I thought they would have just switched it. They didn't switch the ticket. I had to buy a whole new ticket.
Really?
Entirely new ticket because of that foolish mistake.
Wow. And he could have let you go.
And he could have let me go.
He could have saw like you are a stranger. You don't know what's going
he didn't
on.
Care.
He didn't care.
The man just told me get off the train, kicked me off the train, and then told me to go speak to the agent.
Oh my gosh, that is messed up. And then they was like, you gonna buy another, you gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today. And I learned.
That's right.
So you take that lesson. I learned for you. Just like Jesus died on the cross for all of us, I took that lesson for you.
There you go. You don't have to experience that. But that's a good one though, because my flights were in the 24-hour
God, hopefully you
as well. No, I didn't. So I made sure I paid attention to it because one of my flights to Madrid from Lisbon was like 1,300. And I was like, okay, that's one. All right. I had to make sure I got my calculations correct.
No, but it's easy for me. It's easier when it's like that because I know the 24-hour clock on military time.
It just said 5 though.
5. So in my head, it was 5 p.m.
Got you. Because it even say a.m. versus
which
understood.
it won't say.
Interesting.
It won't say a.m. or p.m. But in my head, why am I taking the train at 5 a.m.?
Right. And why would they put? Okay, got you. You weren't even thinking that they would have put in the 24-hour for that. Got it. Us. Okay. I would say as well, one thing that I would recommend as well for people when you're traveling is that you may not think of doing prior, but I would say do it. Look up their national holidays. Their national holidays are different, right? And so stuff you may want to see may be closed, such as museums, restaurants may be closed that day, other cultural things that you want to experience. And so when I was in Lisbon, luckily for me, I was leaving Wednesday, but the next day, which was Thursday, was their national holiday for their independence. Wow. And so for me, it was like, oh, okay, good. Because I would have, if I had booked, maybe wanted to see a museum that day, that would have messed up my schedule. However, it could have been a nice surprise as well, celebrating in a country, their holiday. But do pay attention to that. Look it up if there's going to be holidays around the time you're going, because you may want to experience something and it may be closed that day.
Makes sense.
So any other tips or recommendations for traveling to Lisbon or just in general?
I would just say, don't be afraid to stay in Airbnbs, and particularly in their historic district like Alfama. At the end of my trip, a lot went wrong. Well, a lot went wrong because of how I fly, which wasn't a bad thing ultimately. So I had the opportunity to get a new Airbnb, and this time, I got it closer to the city in Alfama. And so I stayed a little bit further. It wasn't far out. I just had to either take taxi, which is what I typically did, or the train
Okay.
to get downtown.
Okay.
But Alfama is central, and I would highly suggest
Yes,
staying there.
it's beautiful there. I really
It's
enjoyed
beautiful.
seeing it. But yeah, look around the different places and see where you can get your money's worth. And centrally located, I was able to walk everywhere, which is nice. A lot of hills. You get your steps in, you get your glutes worked out, all of that. So it was good. But thank you, Assher, for talking about Lisbon. I hope y'all are excited.
You sure too. It was an exchange.
That's true. Yes. And hopefully, you guys are inspired to go as well.
Yeah.
Right? And so we'll see you guys next time. Again, just shouting out Naki on Airbnb. That's our shout out for today. Make sure you book that tour, the Black History Tour of Lisbon. It's really good. And so for our listeners, we just want to remind you of all the platforms that you can listen to us and find us. And so we are on Instagram. Yes.
At the Young Black Travelers blog.
Yes. We are on
TikTok, Young Black Travelers. We are on, obviously you're listening to us on Spotify. We are also on Apple iTunes. We are in many different places. Facebook, Young Black Travelers. TikTok, I said that already, Young Black Travelers. But also we are on Twitter at YBT blog. We're on Threads at Young Black Travelers blog.
Awesome. So follow us, subscribe, share, send it to somebody who needs this. Maybe you're trying to inspire somebody to book a trip with you. Do that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, y'all.